The alarm rang through the metal halls of Station Kepler 7. Cadet Zix 4402 moved as fast as his crystal legs would carry him. His body caught the light from the ceiling panels and threw it back in rainbow colors. Other cadets stepped aside as he passed. Some laughed, others just stared. Zix was late for combat training again. His kind moved differently than the others. Where most cadets could run and jump with ease, every step for Zix required careful thought. One wrong move could crack his crystal skin. One bad fall could shatter him completely. The Galactic Military Academy took the best young beings from 43 different worlds. They came here to learn how to protect the galaxy. They came here to become officers in the Great Defense Corps. But first, they had to survive the academy itself. Zix reached the training room just as Instructor Vex started speaking. The massive Helion stood 3 meters tall with skin like black stone. His 4 eyes swept across the room, taking in every cadet. "Today we practice hand-to-hand combat," Instructor Vex announced. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You will fight until one cadet cannot continue. You will learn that in real battle, mercy gets you killed." The cadets formed a circle. In the center stood Cadet Commander Thranx. The Kralak was a mountain of muscle and bone. His 6 arms moved like deadly snakes. Scars covered his gray skin from countless fights. He was the strongest cadet in their year. Everyone knew it. Everyone feared him. "Who wants to challenge me?" Thranx asked. His voice carried the sound of grinding rocks. His yellow eyes looked around the circle. No one moved. No one spoke. Thranx had been at the academy for 3 years. He had never lost a fight. He had put 17 cadets in the medical bay. 3 of them never came back. The instructors called it natural selection. They said the weak had no place in the Defense Corps. Behind Thranx stood his pack. 5 other Kralaks who followed him everywhere. They were not as strong as their leader, but they were still dangerous. Together, they ruled the academy through fear. Zix tried to make himself smaller. His crystal body reflected the training room lights. The reflection caught Thranx's attention. The Kralak's eyes fixed on him like targeting lasers. "What about our little light show?" Thranx said. "Zix 4402. Step forward." Zix's crystal heart began beating faster. The sound rang like a tiny bell inside his chest. He shook his head slowly. "I am not ready for combat training, Cadet Commander." "I did not ask if you were ready," Thranx replied. "I gave you an order." Instructor Vex watched from the side. His arms were crossed. His expression showed nothing. The academy had rules about cadet fights. As long as no one died, the instructors would not interfere. They said conflict built character. They said it separated the strong from the weak. Zix had no choice. He stepped into the center of the circle. His crystal feet rang against the metal floor like wind chimes. The other cadets moved back to give them space. Some looked excited, others seemed uncomfortable. All of them stayed quiet. Thranx smiled. His teeth were like broken glass. "This will be quick." But the fight did not start immediately. Thranx liked to talk first. He liked to make his victims afraid before he hurt them. Fear made the victory more satisfying. "Do you know what we call your kind where I come from?" Thranx asked as he circled around Zix. "We call you decoration. Pretty things to look at, but useless for real work." Zix said nothing. He kept his eyes on Thranx's 6 hands. The Kralak could strike from any direction. Zix's tactical mind worked quickly. He calculated angles and distances. He looked for weaknesses, but his body was too fragile to use what his mind discovered. "My grandfather kept a crystalline as a pet," Thranx continued. "It sat in his garden and caught sunlight. Very pretty, very useless. When it broke, he just bought another one." Some of the cadets laughed. Not all of them, but enough. The sound echoed off the training room walls. It mixed with the hum of the station's engines. It created a ugly music that made Zix feel sick. "Please," Zix whispered. "I do not wish to fight." "Too late for that," Thranx said. His smile grew wider. "You are in the military now. Sometimes you have to fight whether you want to or not. The first blow came without warning. Thranks moved faster than something his size should move. His lower right hand struck Zix in the shoulder. The sound was like a hammer hitting crystal. A thin crack appeared in Zix's shoulder joint. Blue light leaked out like blood. Zix stumbled backward. The crack in his shoulder sent pain through his whole body. But crystal pain was different from flesh pain. It was sharp and cold and constant. It did not fade with time. Beautiful, Thranks said, looking at the glowing crack. It lights up when it breaks. How useful. Another blow landed on Zix's chest. Then another on his leg. Each strike created new cracks. Each crack leaked more light. Soon Zix looked like a broken lamp with light pouring out of a dozen wounds. The laughter grew louder. Even some cadets who seemed uncomfortable before were smiling now. There was something about watching someone else suffer that made beings feel better about their own pain. Zix fell to his knees. His crystal skin was now a map of glowing fractures. The tactical part of his mind calculated how much more damage he could take. The answer was not much. 3 or 4 more strikes would cause complete matrix failure. He would die. Get up, Thranks ordered. We are not finished. Zix tried to stand. His legs would not support him anymore. The cracks had weakened his structure too much. He looked up at Thranks with eyes like blue diamonds. I cannot continue, Zix said quietly. Then you should not have come to my academy, Thranks replied. He raised all 6 hands above his head. The blow would shatter Zix completely. The laughter filled the room like poison gas. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It was the sound of cruelty disguised as entertainment. It was the sound of the strong enjoying the suffering of the weak, but the killing blow never came. Instead, footsteps echoed across the training room floor. Someone was walking toward the center of the circle. The laughter began to fade as heads turned to see who dared interrupt Cadet Commander Thranks. The footsteps belonged to a human. The training session had ended 2 hours ago. Most cadets were in their quarters or the dining hall. But Zix 4402 remained in the equipment bay, trying to repair himself. His crystal body could heal small cracks with time and concentration. He sat in a corner, focusing his energy on closing the fractures that still leaked blue light. The equipment bay was supposed to be empty after training hours. It held spare weapons, armor pieces, and maintenance tools. The walls were lined with metal shelves that reached the ceiling. Dim lights created shadows between the storage units. It was a good place to hide. It was also a good place to corner someone. Footsteps echoed from the entrance. Heavy footsteps. Zix looked up from his meditation and felt his crystal heart skip a beat. Thranks stood in the doorway with 3 of his pack members behind him. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dim light like hungry predators. Look what we found, Thranks said, his voice echoing off the metal walls. Our little light show, all alone. Zix tried to stand, but his legs were still weak from the afternoon's damage. The cracks in his joints made movement painful. He managed to get to his feet, but he swayed like a tree in strong wind. Please, Zix said quietly. I was only trying to heal. I will leave if you need the space. Oh, you are not going anywhere, Thranks replied. He stepped into the bay, followed by his 3 companions. The Kralak named Vorth closed the door behind them. The sound of the lock clicking into place rang through the room like a death sentence. Jaxel, the smallest of the 4 Kralaks, moved to block the emergency exit. Grix positioned himself near the tool racks. They had done this before. They knew how to trap their prey. We have been thinking about your performance today, Thranks continued as he walked closer to Zix. The instructors say, we need to understand our equipment better. We need to know how much stress different materials can handle. Zix backed against the wall. The cold metal pressed against his crystal spine. There was nowhere left to run. I do not understand. You are made of crystal, yes? Thranks asked. His 6 hands flexed slowly, like a cat extending its claws. Crystal is a material. Materials have breaking points. We want to find yours. The first blow hit Zix in the stomach. It was not as hard as the strikes from training, but it was precise. Thrinks knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage without killing immediately. A new crack opened across Zix's abdomen, leaking blue light like liquid starshine. Fascinating, Grix said, watching the glow spread. It really does light up when damaged. Like a warning system. Another strike hit Zix's left arm, then his right leg. Each blow was calculated to create more cracks without causing complete structural failure. The Kralax had learned patience. They wanted their entertainment to last. "Help!" Zix called out weakly. But his voice was too quiet to carry beyond the equipment bay. And even if someone heard, who would come? The Academy's unspoken rule was clear. Cadets solved their own problems. "No one is coming," Vorth said with a laugh that sounded like grinding metal. "Everyone knows better than to interfere with Kralak business." The assault continued methodically. Thranks would strike, then step back to examine the damage. His pack members offered suggestions about where to hit next. They discussed Zix's breaking points like engineers studying a stress test. "The joints seem weakest," Jaxel observed after landing a blow to Zix's shoulder. "The crystal formations are thinner there, but the torso cracks spread further," Grix countered. More visual effect. They were not fighting. They were experimenting. They were turning torture into a learning experience. The clinical nature of it somehow made it worse than simple violence. Zix's vision began to blur as more cracks spread across his body. Crystal beings could survive extensive damage, but they had limits. Too many fractures would cause cascade failure. His entire matrix would collapse, turning him to dust. "Please stop," Zix whispered. The words came out as barely a breath. "I will do anything you ask." "We are not asking for anything," Thranks replied. "We are just learning. Knowledge is important for military officers." The bay door had been left slightly open. Through the crack, other cadets began to gather. Word had spread that something interesting was happening in the equipment bay. They came to watch like spectators at a sporting event. No one tried to stop what was happening. Some looked uncomfortable, but uncomfortable was not the same as willing to act. Getting involved meant making enemies of the Kralax. It meant potentially becoming the next target. A few cadets even began to laugh. The Vergan twins found Zix's light show amusing. Two Hellion cadets made jokes about crystal chandeliers. The laughter was not as loud as it had been during training, but it was there. It mixed with the sound of cracking crystal and formed a horrible chorus. "Harder," someone called from the doorway. "Make it brighter," Thranks obliged. His next strike landed directly on a major crack in Zix's chest. The fracture spread like lightning across his torso. Blue light poured out, illuminating the entire bay in an eerie glow. The watching cadets gasped and laughed harder. Some began taking pictures with their personal devices. They wanted to remember this moment. They wanted to share it with friends who were not here to see it live. Zix's legs finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees, then fell forward onto his hands. Crystal fragments fell from his body and rang against the metal floor like broken bells. Each piece that fell meant permanent damage. Crystal beings could heal cracks, but they could not regrow lost pieces. "Almost finished," Thranks said, examining his work with satisfaction. "Just a few more precise strikes should do it." Zix looked up at his torturer through eyes clouded with pain. His tactical mind, even damaged, continued to calculate. 3 more major impacts would cause complete failure. He had perhaps 90 seconds before his matrix collapsed entirely. The laughter from the doorway grew louder. More cadets had arrived to watch the finale. They pressed closer to get a better view of the dying light show. "This is educational," one of the Helian cadets said. "I never knew crystal beings were so fragile." "All the weak species break easily," replied a Vorth. "That is why they should not be in the military." Thranks raised his hands for the final blow. All 6 arms lifted above his head like an executioner's axe. The watching cadets held their breath in anticipation. Zix closed his eyes and prepared for the darkness. But before Thranks could strike, new footsteps echoed in the bay. These steps were different. Lighter. More controlled. They carried authority despite coming from a much smaller being. The laughter stopped abruptly. Heads turned toward the entrance. Standing in the doorway was Cadet Maya Chen, one of the few humans at the academy. She was small compared to most species represented at Kepler-7. She had no visible weapons or natural armor, but something in her posture made the room fall silent. Maya's dark eyes took in the scene with cold calculation. She saw Zix bleeding light on the floor. She saw Thranks poised to deliver a killing blow. She saw the crowd of watchers treating torture like entertainment. "That's enough," Maya said quietly. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Maya Chen had been walking back from the library when she heard the laughter. It was not the good kind of laughter that came from friendship or joy. This laughter had an edge to it. It sounded like the noise crowds made at blood sports. She had followed the sound to the equipment bay. What she found there made her stomach turn cold. But Maya did not let the feeling show on her face. Humans had learned long ago that showing emotion at the wrong time could be dangerous. The crowd of watching cadets turned to stare at her. Most of them were larger than she was. Some were twice her size. A few could crush her with one hand. But Maya did not step backward. She had made her decision the moment she saw Zix bleeding light on the floor. Thranks slowly lowered his 6 arms, his yellow eyes fixed on Maya with the kind of attention a hawk gives to a mouse. "This does not concern you, human." "You are right," Maya replied calmly. "It does not concern me, but I am making it my concern anyway." The watching cadets murmured among themselves. No one challenged Thranks directly. Everyone knew better. The Kralak had never lost a fight in 3 years at the academy. He had put stronger beings than Maya in the medical bay. "You should leave," Vorth suggested from his position near the door. "Before you get hurt." Maya ignored him. She walked into the center of the bay, stepping carefully around the crystal fragments that had fallen from Zix's body. Each piece caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. She knelt beside Zix and examined his injuries. Maya was not a medical expert, but she had studied different species during her first year. Crystalline beings could survive extensive damage, but Zix was close to his limit. A few more impacts would cause complete matrix collapse. "Can you move?" Maya asked quietly. Zix tried to lift his head, but the effort sent new cracks spreading across his neck. "I cannot." "Too much damage." Maya nodded. She had expected that answer. Zix could not run, and she could not carry him. That left only one option. She would have to go through the Kralaks to get help. "This is touching," Thranks said, his voice dripping with false emotion. "The weak helping the weak. But you are only making things worse for yourself." Maya stood up slowly. She faced Thranks without fear, though every human instinct told her to run. Fear was useful when it helped you survive. It was not useful when it stopped you from doing what was right. "Let me explain something to you," Maya said in the same calm voice she might use to discuss the weather. "You have 3 choices. You can stop this now and walk away. You can continue and face the consequences later. Or you can try to stop me from getting help for him." The crowd laughed at that. A human threatening a Kralak seemed like the setup to a joke. Even some cadets who had looked uncomfortable before found Maya's words amusing. Thranks smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. "And what exactly do you think you can do to stop us, little human? You have no claws, no natural armor, no enhanced strength. Your species is soft and weak." "You are right about most of that," Maya agreed. "Humans are not the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy. We do not have the best natural weapons or defenses." She paused, looking around the equipment bay. Her eyes took in every detail. The tool racks, the ventilation systems, the emergency controls, the ceiling supports. Humans were good at seeing how things connected. They were good at finding weaknesses in systems that seemed strong. "But humans are very good at solving problems," Maya continued. "And right now, you are my problem." Grix stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "This is boring. Let's just finish both of them and be done with it." "Wait," Thranks said, raising one hand. He was enjoying this too much to end it quickly. "I want to hear what the human thinks she can do. Please, enlighten us with your brilliant plan." Maya looked at him for a long moment. She was calculating odds and possibilities. Humans could process complex information very quickly when they needed to. They could see patterns that other species missed. "My plan is simple," Maya said. "I am going to get help for Zix. You are going to try to stop me. One of us is going to be very surprised by the outcome." The laughter grew louder. Even some of the Kralax were chuckling now. The idea of a human defeating them in any kind of confrontation seemed impossible. But Maya was not planning to fight them the way they expected. Humans had learned something important during their short history. When you could not win by being stronger, you won by being smarter. When you could not fight fair, you changed the rules. "You cannot reach the emergency alarm from here," Jaxel pointed out. "We will stop you before you get close." "You cannot overpower us," Vorth added. "You are too small and weak." "You cannot outrun us," Grix said with a grin. "Kralax are faster than humans." Maya nodded at each statement. They were all correct. In a straight fight or chase, she would lose badly. But humans rarely fought straight fights when they could avoid them. "You are absolutely right," Maya said. "I cannot beat you by being stronger or faster. But I do not need to beat you. I just need to create enough chaos to get help here." She moved toward the nearest tool rack as she spoke. Her movements were casual, like someone browsing in a store. But her eyes were measuring distances and angles with military precision. Threnx followed her movement with growing suspicion. "What are you planning, human?" "Nothing complicated," Maya replied. She reached for a plasma cutter from the tool rack. "I told you. Humans are good at solving problems. The problem is getting help for Zix. The solution is making enough noise to bring security here." Vorth moved to block her path to the emergency controls. Grix positioned himself near the main door. Jaxel stayed close to Threnx, ready to follow orders. They thought they had covered all the obvious escape routes, but Maya was not looking for escape routes. She was looking for things she could break that would create automatic emergency responses. Humans were very good at understanding how systems worked. They were even better at understanding how to make systems fail safely. "The Academy has strict safety protocols," Maya said, still speaking in that calm, conversational tone. "Any major equipment malfunction triggers automatic emergency responses. Security teams, medical teams, damage control teams, lots of people with lots of questions." She activated the plasma cutter. The blue flame hissed to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "All I have to do is create the right kind of malfunction." Threnx realized what she was planning a second too late. By the time he moved to stop her, Maya had already turned the plasma cutter toward the environmental control panel. "Stop her!" Threnx roared, but Maya was already moving. And when humans moved with purpose, they could be very difficult to stop. Maya sliced through the environmental control panel with surgical precision. Sparks flew as the plasma cutter severed critical connections. Warning lights began flashing throughout the bay. Alarms would follow soon. Threnx lunged toward her with all 6 arms extended. He moved fast for something his size, but Maya had expected the attack. She rolled sideways, using her smaller size to slip between his grasping hands. The plasma cutter remained active in her grip. "Kill the human!" Threnx bellowed to his pack. But Maya was no longer where he expected her to be. She had moved to the center of the bay, near a junction of overhead pipes and ventilation systems. The plasma cutter's blue flame reached toward the ceiling as she worked. Vorth charged from the left while Grix approached from the right. They planned to crush her between them like a nut in a vise. It was a simple tactic that had worked many times before. Maya waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat to the floor. Both Kralax crashed into each other above her with bone-crushing force. While they untangled themselves, she cut through a support cable that held a section of ventilation piping. The heavy pipe swung down like a pendulum. Grix looked up just in time to see 200 kilograms of metal heading for his skull. The impact sent him sprawling across the bay, unconscious before he hit the floor. "Impossible," Jaxel whispered. "She planned that." Maya had indeed planned it. Humans had a gift for seeing how systems could be turned against themselves. They could look at a room and see not just walls and furniture, but potential weapons and traps. The environmental system began screaming warnings as damaged sensors detected atmospheric irregularities. Emergency protocols were already activating. Security teams would arrive within minutes, but minutes might be too long for Zix, who was still bleeding light on the floor. Thranks roared in anger and frustration. "You think you are clever? Human? Let me show you what happens to clever prey." He rushed toward Maya with the speed of a landslide. His 6 arms moved in a pattern designed to grab her no matter which way she dodged. It was a technique that had never failed him, but Maya did not dodge. Instead, she sprayed the plasma cutter across the floor between them, melting the metal surface into a molten barrier. Thranks's forward momentum carried him into the superheated metal before he could stop. The Kralax screamed as the molten floor burned his feet. He stumbled backward, leaving smoking footprints in the warped metal. His charge had become a retreat in seconds. Vorth tried a different approach. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the tool rack and threw it at Maya's head. The weapon spun through the air with enough force to crack her skull. Maya tracked the wrench's path with her eyes and tilted her head just enough. The metal tool whistled past her ear and struck a bank of electrical controls behind her. More sparks flew. More alarms began sounding. The emergency response was escalating exactly as she had hoped. "You are making this worse for yourself," Vorth snarled. "When we catch you, your death will not be quick." "When you catch me," Maya replied calmly, "you will have to explain to security why you were torturing a fellow cadet." "I wonder which of us has more to worry about." Jaxel moved to flank her while Thranks recovered from his burned feet. They were learning to work together against this unexpected threat. But humans were very good at adapting to changing situations. Maya triggered the room's fire suppression system by touching the plasma cutter to a smoke detector. Thick foam began spraying from nozzles in the ceiling, reducing visibility to almost zero. In the sudden white chaos, she became almost invisible. The watching cadets could no longer see what was happening inside the bay. They heard the sounds of combat, crashes, shouts, the hiss of the plasma cutter. But they could not tell who was winning. Through the foam, Maya moved like a ghost. She cut support cables and power lines with precise strikes. Each cut created new hazards for the Kralax, while making the emergency situation worse. Soon, half the station's damage control teams would be responding to this single room. Thranks thrashed blindly through the foam, trying to grab her. His massive hands caught nothing but air. "Fight me properly, coward. This is proper fighting," Maya replied from somewhere in the white cloud. "Humans fight to win, not to prove anything." A heavy crash echoed through the bay as another piece of equipment fell. Jaxel cursed as something sharp cut his arm. The foam made everything slippery and dangerous. Maya had turned their own environment against them. The equipment bay that should have been their trap had become their prison. Every advantage they thought they had was now working against them, but Thranks was not finished. He was wounded and angry, but not beaten. Kralax were survivors. They had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them. A little foam and some falling debris would not stop him. "Enough games," he roared. "I will bring this whole room down if I have to." He began tearing at the structural supports with his bare hands. If he could not catch the human, he would collapse the ceiling on all of them. Even if it killed him, it would kill her too. Maya realized his plan and knew she had miscalculated. Humans were good at thinking strategically, but they sometimes forgot that other species could be just as desperate and violent. Thranks was willing to die to destroy her. She moved toward Zix, who lay helpless in the center of the chaos. If the ceiling came down, the crystalline would be crushed instantly. All her efforts to save him would be meaningless. "You would kill your own pack members?" Maya called out, hoping to reach whatever remained of Thranks's rational mind. "My pack can survive," Thranks replied as he continued tearing at support beams. "You cannot." The ceiling began to groan under stress. Chunks of metal and composite material fell like deadly rain. The foam was starting to dissipate, but visibility was still poor. Maya made a desperate decision. She could not stop Thranks from bringing down the ceiling, but she could make sure the emergency response teams found them quickly. She could guarantee that Zix would receive medical attention, even if it cost her everything. She turned the plasma cutter on herself. The beam sliced across her arm, opening a deep gash that bled freely. The pain was incredible, but it served a purpose. Human blood would trigger the Bay's biological hazard protocols. Medical teams would be dispatched immediately. More importantly, her injury would be recorded by the Bay's monitoring systems. Everything that happened here was being documented by security cameras and sensors. The truth would come out, no matter what happened to her. Thranks emerged from the thinning foam, his yellow eyes blazing with rage. His hands dripped with his own blood from tearing at the metal supports. Behind him, structural supports groaned and twisted under stress. "You think hurting yourself will save you?" he demanded. "No," Maya said quietly, cradling her wounded arm. "But it will save him." She looked down at Zix, who was watching the battle through pain-clouded eyes. The crystalline had seen everything. He had witnessed a being from another world sacrifice herself for someone she barely knew. "Why?" Zix whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Maya smiled despite her pain. "Because it was the right thing to do." The ceiling began to collapse. The emergency teams arrived like a storm of organized chaos. Security officers in heavy armor burst through the damaged doorway. Medical teams followed close behind, their scanners already searching for life signs. Damage control specialists began assessing the structural collapse. Maya lay unconscious beneath a fallen ceiling beam. Her arm was still bleeding from the self-inflicted wound. The plasma cutter lay nearby, its energy cell finally depleted. Around her, the equipment bay looked like a war zone. Zix was alive but barely functional. His crystal matrix had held together through the collapse, though new cracks had appeared from falling debris. Blue light leaked from dozens of fractures across his body. He tried to speak as the medical teams reached him. "The human," he whispered in a voice like breaking glass. "She saved me. She sacrificed herself to save me." The security chief, Commander Drath, surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. The Altarian had seen many accidents and fights during his years at the Academy. But this was different. The damage patterns told a story of deliberate action rather than random violence. Thrank sat against a wall, his hands badly cut from tearing at the metal supports. Vorth was conscious but dazed. Grix remained unconscious from his collision with the fallen pipe. Jaxel had minor cuts and burns but was alert enough to answer questions. "What happened here?" Commander Drath demanded. The Kralax looked at each other. They could lie and claim it was an accident. They could say the human attacked them without reason. But the security cameras had recorded everything. The monitoring systems had captured every word and action. More importantly, the crowd of watching cadets had seen the truth. Some were already talking to the security officers, describing what they had witnessed. The story was spreading through the academy faster than an epidemic. "We were training," Thrank said finally. It was not a lie, but it was not the truth either. Commander Drath activated his personal scanner and replayed the last 30 minutes of security footage on his wrist display. His expression grew darker with each passing second. When the recording ended, he looked at the Kralax with disgust. "Training," he repeated coldly. "Is that what you call torture now?" Medical teams worked frantically on both Maya and Zix. The human's injuries were serious but not life-threatening. The plasma cutter had missed major arteries and organs. Her sacrifice had been calculated even in desperation. Zix's condition was more critical. His crystal matrix was on the edge of cascade failure. Too many cracks had weakened his structural integrity. The medical team's nanobots worked to stabilize the fractures while emergency surgery was prepared. Academy Director Yalth arrived within the hour. The ancient Vorthan moved slowly, but with absolute authority. Her 4 eyes took in the scene while her mind processed the implications. This incident would echo far beyond the academy. She reviewed the security footage in complete silence. When it ended, she turned to the assembled security staff and medical teams. "Clear the area. I want reports from all witnesses within 2 hours. And I want complete medical files on all injured parties." The watching cadets were escorted away for individual questioning. Many seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. Some were crying. Others looked sick. A few appeared angry at themselves for not acting sooner. In the medical bay, Maya regained consciousness 3 hours after the collapse. Her first words were about Zix. Is he alive? Did the medical teams reach him in time? Dr. Helix, the station's chief medical officer, nodded. He is stable. The nanobots have sealed most of the critical fractures. He will recover. Thanks to your actions. Maya tried to sit up but winced as pain shot through her bandaged arm. What about the others? The Kralax? They are alive, Dr. Helix replied carefully. They are also under arrest pending a formal investigation. Word of the incident spread beyond the academy within days. The security footage was classified, but summaries reached the highest levels of Galactic military command. A human cadet had risked everything to save someone from a completely different species. She had shown tactical brilliance under pressure and moral courage that impressed even the most skeptical observers. Admiral Kess, 9 of the Unified Defense Corps, reviewed the incident personally. The Cerebrian's massive brain processed every detail of Maya's actions. When the analysis was complete, she issued a statement that would change how humans were viewed throughout the galaxy. Cadet Maya Chen has demonstrated qualities that we have rarely seen in any species, the Admiral announced. Strategic thinking under extreme pressure. Willingness to sacrifice for abstract principles. The ability to turn disadvantages into advantages through pure innovation. These are the traits we need in our officers. Thranks and his pack faced court-martial proceedings that lasted 3 weeks. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The security footage showed their actions clearly. Witness testimony from dozens of cadets confirmed the pattern of abuse and torture. But the most damning evidence came from Zix himself. The crystalline had recorded everything in his tactical memory core. Crystallines could replay experiences with perfect accuracy when needed. His testimony left no room for doubt or interpretation. Thranks was expelled from the academy and banned from military service for life. His pack members received lesser punishments but would never advance beyond the lowest enlisted ranks. Their careers were over before they had truly begun. Maya spent 2 weeks recovering in the medical bay. During that time, she received visitors from across the academy. Cadets from dozens of species came to thank her, or simply to meet the human who had done the impossible. Zix visited her every day once he was mobile again. His crystal body still showed faint scars from the attack, but the major fractures had healed cleanly. He moved with new confidence, no longer afraid of the shadows. I do not understand, he said during one of their conversations. Why did you help me? Your species and mine have no alliance. No shared history. You gained nothing by risking yourself. Maya considered the question carefully. My people have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I could not do nothing. Quote, but you barely knew me. Zix persisted. I am not your friend or family. I am just another cadet from a different world. You were in pain, Maya replied simply. You needed help. That was enough. The conversation was overheard by other cadets in the medical bay. The word spread through the academy like ripples in a pond. Soon, beings across the galaxy were discussing the human concept of helping strangers simply because it was right. Maya returned to classes 3 weeks after the incident. She found that everything had changed. Cadets who had ignored her before now greeted her with respect. Instructors who had dismissed humans as weak began paying closer attention to human techniques and strategies. More importantly, the culture of bullying and intimidation that had ruled the academy began to crumble. Other cadets found courage in Maya's example. They started standing up for each other across species lines. The strict hierarchy that had seemed natural began to seem arbitrary and cruel. 6 months later, Maya received the Cross of Unity in a ceremony attended by representatives from every member species of the galactic community. She was the first human to receive the honor, but Academy Director Yalth promised she would not be the last. Today we recognize not just one cadet's courage, Director Yalth announced to the assembled crowd, but a new understanding of what strength really means. True strength is not about overpowering others. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. After the ceremony, Maya and Zix stood together on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The crystalline's body caught the light from nearby suns and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the deck. "Do you think it will last?" Zix asked. "This change in how beings treat each other?" Maya was quiet for a moment, watching the endless dance of stars beyond the station's windows. "Some changes take time to become permanent. But I think we planted something important here. Understanding, maybe. Or just the idea that we do not have to accept cruelty as natural. Your species is remarkable," Zix said softly. "Most beings would have walked away, would have decided it was not their problem. Some humans would have walked away too," Maya admitted. "We are not perfect, but we try to do better. That is what makes us who we are." As they watched, a transport ship departed from the station, carrying graduates to their new assignments throughout the galaxy. Many of those graduates would carry with them the lessons learned from a human cadet who chose courage over safety, justice over convenience. The galaxy was vast and full of conflicts. There would always be beings who chose cruelty over compassion, strength over mercy. But now there were also beings who had seen another way, who had witnessed the power of standing up for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. In the medical bay records, filed under Incident Resolution, was a simple note. Cadet Maya Chen demonstrated that true strength lies not in the ability to harm others, but in the willingness to protect them. Recommended for advanced tactical training and leadership development. But the real change was not written in any file. It lived in the minds and hearts of every being who had witnessed or heard about that day in the equipment bay. It spread through the galaxy, one conversation at a time, one act of courage at a time. The laughter that had filled the equipment bay that day was gone. In its place was something far more valuable. The understanding that every being, regardless of species or strength, deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. And sometimes, when courage was needed most, it could come from the most unexpected places.